In a previous podcast, I talked about the 1986 Christmas morning when my sister and I laid eyes on and then played a game called King's Quest II. A little California company called Sierra, and later known as Sierra Online, more or less pioneered the concept of 3D adventure games. They were kind of a faux 3D. They were made up of these frames that were tableau environments, and your character would move from frame to frame and complete quests based on puzzles and largely fairy tales where a player would use common sense and his own trivia knowledge to get through. The genre seemed to die out in the mid-90s, and I think a lot of us assumed it had its time pass, had been obsoleted by new games, new genres, new mechanics, new graphics. But publishers and developers like Telltale Games have been reviving this genre incredibly, and proving that perhaps after all we do like a good puzzle, and we don't mind if we have a semi-animated character who romps around in a picture frame. And to that end, Telltale Games recently announced that they will be, in their own words, rebooting the King's Quest series. It's definitely a happy moment for me. I wasn't crazy about the King's Quest series. They're definitely games from that era that I have more of a sentimental reaction to, but they were great. They were fun. I played 1 through 5, played 1, 2, 3, 4 contemporarily, and then played 5 some years later, the mid-late 90s, I think, as part of a collection. And so experienced the games when they were cutting edge, when it was high class to play them on 16 colors instead of a monochrome monitor. But even then, it was an experience. There was just something neat about the format that Sierra presented. And certainly Telltale is a company that does a good job matching modern mechanics and production values with the essence of a game. So I can't think of a better company to revitalize this series and really bring one of the biggest names in adventure gaming back to a kind of commercial relevance. That's just incredible. What's a little funny is that I think to some degree it would be beneficial, and maybe the only way in which these games could really be well received. I recall Ed trying to spread the word to you back when we were in high school, and I think your response was, Mike, I tried to play the game, but the graphics were so crude that I couldn't identify things on the screen.
Yes, especially the original King's Quest, I believe, is what you had given me.
Oh, had I? Okay.
It was for 1995 or 96, probably when I was playing it. Yeah. My original exposure to these games was the Heroes Quest games, which I think they also went with the title Quest for Glory.
Yes.
I can't remember which was the original series name, but either way.
It was Heroes Quest, and I think it may have been changed because it was similar to the Hasbro
board game.
Yeah, the board game, right.
Yep, which was pretty asinine. But anyways, yeah, that was my first exposure to Sierra adventure gaming. And that was clearly already an evolution. It came after the King's Quest games. So it was hard for me to step back in time in terms of both graphics and in-game mechanics. The Heroes Quest games were so much deeper in that there was more of a modern RPG elements to them. You had stats. You engaged in actual real-time combat. It wasn't just...
Yeah, which you didn't in King's Quest. It was, you took a wrong turn, you're dead, which is okay. I think that does lend itself to a particular genre.
Oh, definitely. And King's Quest, I think, was kind of an extension of the original like Zork games, the text adventure games. King's Quest was a text adventure game with a graphical user interface attached to it.
Yeah, no, that is a fair assessment. Heather?
I'm just somewhat amazed that you guys are talking about a game that came out 2 years before I was born.
Oh my God.
Well, just imagine the wonder that we have that people are born after any one of the Star Wars games comes out, or
Star Wars games? There are Star Wars games? What?
No, I mean the Star Wars movies. Well, Star Wars games. There was an upright arcade game I'll never forget. I would always it was in the grocery store in Fazio's, and I would look at it admiringly while it was in attract mode. And one afternoon, while my mother was getting everything bagged, I looked at it, and someone had stuck a quarter in it and walked away because. I think what I would usually do is I would press the start button just to see, and I pressed the start button, and next thing I knew, I was in an X-wing on my way to destroy the Death Star. It was
and
wonderful.
It was probably the best 15 seconds of your life. That's probably
10 maybe.
Yeah.
I was never good at
Oh,
when
dude,
I was
did I just
when I was a
chase you
kid.
again?
No, you're there.
You're here.
So anyway, a very interesting facet of this, I find, is the large fan community that has grown up over the years and kind of has as its raison d'etre to not so much reinvent these games, but kind of relive them by following in the footsteps of Sierra Witch in the mid-90s, about the same time as the release of Quest for Glory / Heroes Quest, re-release the King's Quest game, the original, with updated graphics, which were updated graphics at the time, and of course now look quite outdated. But these fans, these players, these coders, these artists put together King's Quest 2. I think they were working on King's Quest 3. Just purely an act of admiration. It wasn't commercial in nature, and they're kind of quaint. I think perhaps what wasn't understood by these enthusiastic people was that games benefit from pacing just as much as movies, or if in a different way. There is an importance to design and good design, and from what I saw, they looked just a little silly. It very much looked like the video game version of fan fiction. But I am curious to know what these people would think. Will they be incensed that some corporate entity is taking over their labor of love, or will they be overjoyed because they are going to be able to play their favorite game again?
Now, Telltale also did, all the recent adventure games, really, didn't they? These are the same guys that did Wallace and Gromit, that did what's that LucasArts game?
Monkey Island.
Monkey Island, right? Am I right?
Yes.
It's the same. Yeah.
Same guys.
And every one of their games that I've played as an adventure game.
Yeah, James,
darn
actually,
good.
you had something to say about that, about Telltale's forte.
Yeah, from all the games that I've played, they've never made a bad one, which is very impressive. Well, there's also going back to the fan versions. A lot of developers, when they pick up kind of a dormant franchise, will close down any fan projects, like send cease and desist, statements and things like that. Given Telltale's history, though, they're probably not the company to do that, but that is a possibility.
Because it does become quite relevant. In fact, there was recently, of course, an issue between this fellow who had put together Space Quest games and Activision, I believe, who now owns rights, wanted him to stop until they realized that a specific type of the mobile game that he was putting together, and again, just for his own edification and the enjoyment of others, was acceptable because it did serve, as we were talking about at the beginning of this podcast, as a means of spreading the word about the game. So yeah, that will be interesting to see if there is any kind of legal crackdown on these unsanctioned versions of the game.
Yeah, well, especially when these fan developed projects are oftentimes so bloody good. It almost it wouldn't. You're right. It wouldn't be a bad thing at all for some of them to remain live. Maybe in the case of World of StarCraft, that mod which somebody had built using StarCraft 2's content creation engine.
Yeah.
Blizzard basically is allowing the guy to keep this mod on their servers, just provided he changed the name, which I think is great. They recognize that this guy had this labor of love that was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Why take it away? Because you're risking, especially there where the same developer has held on to this property all this time. Why alienate the same people that have stood by you?
Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be surprised if these fan creations weren't an indication of the remaining value, the extant value of the game. They looked and saw, and wow, people still do cherish these games so far that they'll go to great lengths to recreate them.
Oh yeah, if 500,000 or 1 million people say have downloaded fan creation X, does that perhaps also mean that maybe half of those, if not all of them, would buy a new King's Quest game? And I bet you the answer is probably yes.
Indeed.
Just before we round out the topic, Mike, question to you. Given that the statement was that this was going to be a reboot of the series, is there any particular direction you'd like to see it go in as someone with experience of the King's Quest series? I mean, when the word reboot is used, I always think of something like J.J. Abrams' Star Trek movie from a couple of years back. Do you think that they could continue kind of the story beats from the original series, or would you prefer a complete kind of starting from scratch, maybe like a recreation of the first game kind of situation?
I could see this going very much awry. Sir Graham in Daventry, trouble is, Anyway, I think Sierra had the right formula in drawing in folktales and fairy tales that people were generally familiar with, and they could use those as well as common sense and logic to solve problems. And defeat enemies and discover the answers to mysteries. As you were saying before, Ed, occasionally, or is that you, James, about these illogical quests that there was no way to know what you actually had to do, so you had to reference an answer book, or in latter years, the internet to get the walkthrough.
I can even remember there were a handful of quests in the original King's Quest that just struck me as completely random.
Mm-hmm.
There really was no logic to their solving them. It's just, here are some random things. Find out how to use them in the environment by typing in every possible action you can.
Mm-hmm. There was a certain charm going back to the original about this tiny California company using the borrowed interest on every popular fairy tale that it could snatch and put together in this pastiche. The land of Daventry, and then Colima, and the third game, which spanned both Daventry and this distant land. It was a neat blend of original and culturally established stories and paradigms. I think the best possible outcome would be something that is, in terms of gameplay and cast and narrative, very familiar. I would be disappointed if, say, King's Quest was not about Sir Graham earning the crown for himself. Honestly, all four of the storylines for the beginning of the series were great. I thought they really worked. But taking that, maybe tightening up some of the quests, adding one here, adding another there, making them a little bit more enjoyable for modern audiences, less of a needle in a haystack, adding puzzles that Telltale is known for, and then updating it with some very, very fine painting and expressive graphics. I think you've got a winning package right there.
How much of Telltale's output have you experienced, Mike? And if you played any, something like from Sam and Max onwards, do you see that engine kind of, just taking the essentials from that and essentially King's Questing it up?
Yeah, I think as long as Telltale can convey almost miraculously the extent, the breadth of this fantasy land that Sierra was able to do. I remember going back to my retro review of King's Quest 2, just how painterly the graphics were. Again, maybe it's just because I experienced them contemporarily that I understood the idiom of these crude little representations. But looking back, it still feels like there's a world there. And I know it is not necessarily easily done with modern graphics. So I would say just as long as Telltale can accomplish that, they're halfway there.